Right, thank you, Richard. Right, can we invite Adam Ross up here? Adam's from Coca-Cola. Where is Adam? There he is, over there. So I'll tell you a tiny bit about Adam whilst he makes his way up here. Oh, you get a soundtrack. Lucky man. So Adam was appointed content lead for Coca-Cola South Pacific in July last year. Sit down here. We've got plenty of water to get through here, Adam, from this one. It's his first client-side role. Before that, he spent 15 years in agencies. Clients range from the Metropolitan Police in London through to Kellogg's, Diageo, Land Rover, Nike, American Express, and Unilever. So he's just gone brand side the last sort of 6 to 8 months, I think. And so I discovered him, not discovered him, but found out about Adam. So I thought he'd be a very interesting guy to come and have a chat with. And partly because of what he's done, or what Coke have done doing this. We were talking the other day, and first off, we were talking about the sort of Coca-Cola culture. And you described yourself as geeking out at working for Coke.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, I think I kind of did a marketing degree a long time ago and then found myself in agency land for 15, 16 years or so. And I think you've always kind of looked, well, I have personally always looked at Coke as sort of being the sort of epitome of what you want to do. And I think agency land of being able to kind of, I'd love to work on Coke, for example, and their history of iconic advertising and branding. And so the fact that I now get to work there inside, I'm definitely geeking out, and my wife takes the piss out of me quite a lot for how I talk about it.
They had an ad that had just sort of started airing, hadn't they, when you arrived? And you said that you thought this was awesome. Your wife thought it was all right, really. We thought we'd just play the ad for you. This is the first Coke ad during Adam's tenure. Not responsible for it himself, but from the team. So this was a lot of fun, wasn't it? Because you had an agency in Brazil.
Yeah, so I joined, just this process had already been kicked off. We were running what's called a global charter, so doing it for a global campaign. And the guys were working with an agency out of Brazil on making this. And I kind of joined at a time where we were just getting into the creative development. The idea was sold, but we're getting into making it. And so, to kind of turn up working for Coke, working on a Coke summer campaign was the first thing I'd done, working with an agency out of Brazil, and working on something that I considered pretty exciting, was a great way to start. And I think when we first saw the very first edit, after kind of talking about it for months, it was a very exciting day. Came home, kind of showed my wife on the phone, and I was like, hey, check this out, the only thing I've been talking about for months, this is it. And she's like, yeah, it's pretty good. She's like, what do you think? I was like, it's awesome. And started to explain to her why it's awesome. And then that's when she first accused me of being a loser. And then a couple of weeks later...
You've done well to last that long before
with
she
my wife?
You,
yeah, definitely. Yeah. And then a couple of weeks later, we got the link score, the kind of research score, and got a 114, which is the highest score a Coke ad has got in a long time, years. And so I came home and was like, hey, remember that ad you thought was just all right? Turns out it's awesome. So.
Now, you've got this title, Head of Content. You don't actually like the word content. We were trying to dream up another title for you the other day, which we might leave to the audience. Could be the first bottle of a brew later to win. Good title.
Yeah.
But content, you don't think is a word generally.
I'm called a content lead, but if you can't define content. In terms, if I was to brief or get briefed on we want a piece of content, I would expect someone to quite rightly go, well, what are you talking about? And I think Bob Hoffman kind of talks a lot about it, about if a pizza box is content. What we just saw is content, and everything is content. So if you can't tell me what it isn't, you can't tell me what it is. And so I kind of find it a bit strange, kind of saying I'm a content lead. I don't necessarily know what that means. So someone said to me, "Oh, would you rather be a creative director?" I was like, "Not really, because creative is just an adjective of how you approach."
You're a bit fussy, really. I'm finding about your job
maybe
title.
indecisive. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, anyway, so during the course of this, we listen to the rest of what Adam's got to say, and then you can tell us afterwards if you've got a new job title for him, and don't hold back.
I'm still relatively new as well, so whether I can get that signed off, I don't know, but we'll see.
Okay. We talked, Richard just mentioned one of the issues, which is that CMOs' job tenures are often very short, and that the agency therefore perhaps stores up more information about the brand than possibly is sometimes held at the brand itself. But what Coke have done is produce this, or sort of evolve this big team, which you look after, about 15 people, plus social media, many of whom have come out of the agency world. Isn't that right?
Yep. So I'm part of this team it's called the Integrated Marketing Communications Team. So some bullshit bingo right there, just to add to the list before. Shortened to IMC. I had to learn an acronym dictionary when I started. But ultimately, it's a team with myself, who's a content lead. There's a connections lead, connections meaning media. There's a design lead run by a guy called Ian, an American guy who's run design agencies all over the world. And there's a sponsorships and partnerships lead and kind of teams within that. And I guess, whether there's 5, 6, 7, 11 Ps, I guess if we focus on the promotion P and have various backgrounds, whether that's agency side, client side, partnership side, media side, to really focus on that area.
But this is quite rare.
I think so, yeah. I didn't know it existed before I had the conversation.
And it's a sort of big bet, in a sense, isn't it? Because a lot of that you sort of leave to the agencies.
Yeah, I think whether it's a bet or not, I think it's an investment. I think it shows how much importance and value Coca-Cola put into creativity and communications. Ultimately, we make syrup and sell that to bottlers who then turn that into products. So the only thing that we really make is brands. And so it's a huge investment into the craft that delivers on that, and a huge investment into the belief that we have in our agency partners, who are the experts to do that, and to make sure that we have the capability in-house to, at the very least, speak the same language. I think when we were talking the other day, there's, when I'm in agency land, you're constantly told that what we think about 100% of our days is probably 5% of what a client thinks about. I think sort of being client side, I think that's even more extreme. I think clients care about it the most, probably, because it's the thing that real people see the most. But the amount of marketing rigor that goes on in client organizations, that the sort of advertising side is just one little bit of that. And I just think, just from a pure resource and timing point of view, for brand managers that are having to, develop campaigns on top of working out distribution, pricing, promotion, new product development, all of those types of things, it's almost an impossible task. So to have a team dedicated to that side that just concentrates on, for me, the content, the advertising, to have someone like Ian, who is a designer, and his whole focus is on design, whether that's packaging, whether that's key visuals, shopper visuals, out of home posters, whatever that, to have that dedicated focus, I think is a huge investment into the craft of creativity.
But we might also say that the agency might sort of look at this two ways. Great to have people who understand them, but hang on a minute, are these people going to do us out of some of the things we're doing?
To a point. We don't make anything in house. I mean, from a design point of view, we do. We have a very talented design team, and we kind of bring in One Green Bean as our social centre. We make in-house, but I don't have a team that's making TV ads. And we're not buying media ourselves or anything like that. But what we are doing is placing a very experienced, senior and capable team within those disciplines to work with the experts to make sure that we can help them help us and get the very best output.
So if you were still agency side, you'd be quite positive about this if this was one of your clients?
I'd like to think so. I think the amount of this might be where I start speaking out of turn. I don't know, but
go on.
I think as an agency person, I imagine many people would have experiences where they've worked on an idea for a while and taken it to a client, and they just don't get it. And whether that's because they don't have the experience, the imagination, the confidence to kind of back themselves or back the agency, and you kind of are really frustrated, and you end up creating work that's probably more bland than you'd hope. Whereas if a creative at an ad agency can talk to a client who has a relatively similar background and a vast of experience and expertise in the craft, then you start to speak a different language. And I think one of the things I think about and I talk to my team about is how can we add the most amount of value internally to our brand teams, but equally and almost more importantly, how can we add a huge amount of value to our agency teams, because that's how we're going to get the very best work, and kind of work more hand in hand with them. So they're taking to this positively.
We're going to talk a lot about agency-client relationship later.
But I mean, I don't think they'd tell me if they weren't. But
no, probably not, actually.
But I'd like to think so.
Because it's a form of in-housing.
Yes and no. I mean, we're not making anything in-house.
Yeah.
I think what we're doing. Just recently we've spent a lot of time internally. Distilling and communicating marketing science and why things work, how decisions are made, system 1, system 2, how do people make choices, what makes effective advertising or content to move the conversation away from I like it or I don't like it, because it's irrelevant whether we like anything or not. Why does it work is the right conversation to have, and so having that sort of dedicated resource to infuse internally is only going to upskill people's ability to write better briefs, to be better placed to evaluate whether work works, rather than tell a creative team at an agency, I just don't like it, I prefer the colour red, it's irrelevant, and be better to better effective feedback, and just be more informed as to why things work, which then in turn help us brief, create and buy better work.
So all brands have marketing departments, but do you think more brands will follow suit and do this? Where effectively what you're doing is just bringing in a whole bunch of skills on top of that, or alongside it, not on top of it?
Yeah, potentially. I think as we heard before, that we always hear the landscape's increasingly fragmented and complex and diverse, and I think the constants never change. I think more people that are in tune with what works and what's come before, and can distill and apply that would only help the industry. So potentially it could and probably should do. We're probably the only industry that doesn't place value on experience, in terms of a lot of the principles of advertising came from the likes of Bernbach and Gossage and Ogilvy, and genuine pioneers in the industry, and the principles remain, yet we keep having to sort of relearn them, which is kind of strange, versus in a medical profession you wouldn't be like, no, I know that worked 40 years ago, but let's try something else.
But
it's just a bit strange.
Why do you think that is, though?
I think we're increasingly attracted to the novelty of the new and shiny. Yeah. I think there's probably a lot of people tasked with making money out of selling the new and shiny, and fear mongering, and again, just I read something this morning actually on the way in that I think 54% of people in the marketing industry haven't ever done any formal marketing training or education, and so you start to look at that as a whole, and you think, well, how are people being informed enough to make decisions about how marketing works or how advertising works, versus going, oh, that's cool, yeah, I don't watch TV, so no one watches TV, or yeah, I'm on, or I see my kid on Snapchat, so everyone's on Snapchat. I'm not having a go at any of those things, but
well, we get that all the time on our panels. We have one particular speaker who comes and tells us everything about television is going in this direction because he happens to have 6 versions of Sky in his house, etc., etc. I won't do a poll of the room to see who the 54% are who haven't done a marketing qualification, because I'd fall out with a lot of you. But it's an interesting point. And in this, obviously, Coca-Cola have decided that there is a lot of value in this, in what they're doing, and they're putting value and creativity together. And value sort of gets a bit lost, doesn't it, these days, around the whole advertising marketing scene. Costs sort of...
Yeah, I think value can be misinterpreted as savings or cheap, which is dangerous. I think. Value is, as we just heard before, kind of measure what you treasure. Like, what is it that's valuable to you, and how do you focus on that? And one of the things that's incredibly valuable to Coca-Cola is the power of creativity. It's arguably the last unfair advantage that you could create. And so there's a huge value in that, and I think it's evident through Coca-Cola's history, and right up until now, in terms of the decisions and investments we're making.
And there's a lot of debate at the moment about short-term, long-term. Across advertising. Where do you stand on that, having just come from agency world, now sitting in brand world?
Same, really. I think you look at the Binet and Field work, and again, it's timeless. I know they've updated it recently just to get a bit more granular in it. But yeah, you can't argue it. You need both short-term and long-term measures, and long-term value is shown to drive more value. I think what we were hearing before around the short tenure of CMOs is a huge issue in that, because that very rarely are CMOs in a job long-term to actually put in place the things that will drive that long-term value. I also think the sheer sort of plethora of data we have, almost instigate short-term thinking, because you're able to measure so much, and just because it can be measured doesn't mean it is valuable. And I think it can create more sort of knee-jerk reactions. On the flip side, I think something I've had my eyes widened to, having been client side, is the power and importance of customers, and retailers, grocers, Coles, Woolies, whatever. I think agency side, whenever you kind of present it, you're like, it's got to work for Coles and Woolies. You're like, oh, really annoying. But when you kind of go back to marketing science, and you think about mental availability, which we're creating, and you think about physical availability and how important that is, then it sort of changes your frame of reference of how important it actually is to have something short term that a Coles or Woolies will buy into, because that is what gives you physical distribution. So if you don't have that, you can create as much mental availability as you want, but if people can't find you, it's irrelevant. So the two are absolutely important, and it's a case of finding the right blend for your brand, for your category, for your task, challenge, whatever that may be.
We may come to a bit more of that later in the day around the whole sort of customer experience area. Right, we've got a panel later about creativity, and we'll discuss a number of ads in that, and we are going to discuss a bit of what works and what doesn't. And I think Nike and Pepsi, for instance, might come up within that one. Coke have just launched a new ad on the King's Cross billboard, the iconic billboard. Here it is. You've probably seen this. Nice little boa there. Could possibly divide opinion.
Yeah, potentially. From two sides, yeah.
Yeah, but you feel Coke are well placed to be a little bit more cutting and perhaps even political.
There's quite a lot that went into this, and this wasn't a sort of reactive thing. We're talked about that for months before we did it. And there's a few things. One is King's Cross is an iconic site for Coke, an owned site that has always just been used to put whatever the campaign message is. It's just treated as another billboard. Whereas we thought, actually, we can probably do something a bit more than that. And so we kind of went down that route. And we wanted to, do stuff that would primarily get noticed, because if you're not making an impact, everything else is irrelevant, and trigger an emotional response, because we know that the power of emotional response in forming memories and recall. And so we looked at what was coming up, and we looked crucially at the sort of heritage of who Coke is and where we've come from. And we've always had at the heart of our brand a passion for inclusivity and bringing people together, and bridging divide, and shared values. And I think it goes all the way through to the very origins of Coca-Cola, where during the sort of race wars in the States, Martin Luther King was getting a lot of slack from the people in Atlanta, which is where Coke is from, and Coke came out and went, this is just not on, and if the people of Atlanta don't get behind this, then we're moving ourselves out of Atlanta, which at the time was a huge deal, given the impact on the economy and of the city, and so I think, and again, it's through the famous Hilltop ad, Teach the World to Sing, all the way through to the Super Bowl spot a couple of years ago, we have always been there supporting inclusivity and diversity. And so there's that at the heart of the brand. This was a moment where, again, we could just sort of reinforce that memory structure of that's crucial to that brand, and support a community, and again support diversity and inclusion. And so that's ultimately why we did it. And kind of consulting with the community the whole way through in developing it, and just making sure that it was landed in the right way, in a way that kind of gets noticed, is a bit irreverent. We had a bit of fun with it. There's a feather boa, welcome to Queen's Cross, but making sure it's very sort of welcoming, inclusive, it's got sort of celebratory message, not a political stance. And people probably, some people might disagree with it, but not, they're just wrong. So at the end of the day, we had a talk about, we don't want to do things.
It's a bit of Coca-Cola democracy for you there. You got.
Well, no, we had a very serious conversation about it. Going, we don't care whether everyone agrees with us or not on certain subjects, because whether people agree with that or not, it's more important to be on the right side of history, and to show what we believe in. And if you believe in that, then great. And if you don't, well, you sort of need to change your views.
Anybody got a question they want to ask Adam whilst we've got him here? This is your first chance today for a question. Yes, there is a lady with a question at the back there. I'm not sure if we've got the mics ready as yet, so you might, if you want to shout your question over. Yeah.
Thank you for taking the time this morning. You touched on as a theme you were internally focusing on marketing science, and I just wanted to know if you can share any principles around how you're tackling looking at creative less subjectively and more objectively, and what you're doing around that.
Yeah, totally. One of the first things I did when I arrived was notice that most conversations internally between my team or agencies and brand teams, you'd look at a piece of work and you'd have a very subjective debate as to whether you liked it or not. And as I said before, it's totally irrelevant. It's more around what works. So what we needed to do was create a framework to, at the very least, give everyone consistent language as to around what works when looking at creative. And again, going back to what I was saying around there are enduring principles that are just true, because that's how brains and memories and emotions and works and how choices are made. And so what we did was develop a framework which was, the very first thing that you have to do is make sure that you're making an impact and getting noticed. And 89% of all advertising fails at that point. 89% of all advertising communications isn't even noticed or remembered, which is a huge issue. So if you're not getting noticed and remembered, then anything else you talk about is absolutely irrelevant. We probably have endless debates around what the message is. What are we trying to persuade people to do? What are we trying to communicate? We very rarely have communications of, well, why is this going to get noticed? Because otherwise the rest doesn't work. The next bit from there is knowing the power of emotion and what an emotion is, or an emotional response is in terms of a physiological reaction and why it's there, how it impacts the formation and retention and recall of a memory. Where the specific part of the brain is in terms of data storage and emotional response. They're next to each other in the brain. That shows the relationship they have. So if you can get noticed and you can trigger an emotional response, you're going to make a memory. That's absolutely crucial, because all we're here to do is create memories, refresh, build, or reinforce memory structures, and we want to do that with distinctive assets. Because if your product or brand is not the thing that is eliciting that impact or eliciting that emotion, then you're not achieving the benefits of that, and it's irrelevant. So if you can do those four things, you're doing quite well. And then if you can wrap around that, they're the sort of fundamentals. And if you can do that in a way that drives fame and gets people talking, then all the better. Because Bonet and Field have proved that's fame-driving campaigns are up to 16 times more efficient. So all of a sudden, you can look at a piece of work, whether that's a brand manager, a member of an IMC team, an agency, creative, whoever it may be. You can look at a piece of work, and rather than go, I like it or I don't like it, or change that from green to red, or make the logo bigger, all of those conversations that we have, we can go, is that going to get noticed? How and why? What emotional response are we trying to evoke, and how is it doing that? And specifically, what have we got in here to do that? And if we do that, we're more confident of creating a memory. That's great. Okay, we're doing that with distinctive assets. How are we using our distinctive assets to do things consistently? Because distinctive assets and consistency are the sort of fuel of System 1 mind. So if we do all of those things, you can dissect a piece of work quite purposefully. And just have a more informed and confident conversation about creating stuff that works.
Where are you from? From? Okay, I should have got you up here to ask the questions. Actually, a far better question than any of the ones I've asked. Right, so I think that's paid for your ticket already, that last couple of minutes. We're going to have to move on, but we thank Adam a great deal for this. He's here until lunchtime if you want a little bit more of the masterclass, so we can tap into that. But many thanks indeed to Adam.
Thank you. Thank you.